My talk, the title, Kafka or Hebrew, is the title of my talk. And I want to talk about the question of if we have the distinction between content and expression, so how expression itself can be political is the question. So, for example, Jean-Luc Godard made a famous distinction between shooting a political film and shooting a film politically. So, in shooting a political film, it is a content which is political. But shooting a film politically, so it's the expression which is political. I think, so I'm actually in the continuations, dialect continuation from R. So when Deleuze and Felix Guattari in their second book, means between the anti-edicts and the Southern Plateau. So this second book is called Kafka pour la littérature mineure, published in 1975. And in that book, Deleuze and Guattari created the concept of minor literature from the work of Franz Kafka. They too were interested in the question of how expression itself can be political. Minor literature is political in its language. For Deleuze and Guattari, the problem of the expression in that book is above all the problem of the language. Of course, so I have this everything on the screen, so you can see me, but also you can see.
Much more interesting.
And asserting that language is a political matter is not in itself very surprising. No? It's been well-known fact, actually, since at least 1492, when Antonio de Nebrija codified the vernacular in Spain. So Antonio Nebrija on the screen, present on the screen. So, for example, the publication of Nebrija's Gramática Castellana was part of the process of building the world's first nation state. We may also recall, because we are a little bit Italian circle, so we may also recall the case of mid-19th century Italian case, Risorgimento, where the implementation of standard language was considered fundamental to national unification. And a very similar political conception of language can also be found in the Japan of Meiji Restoration period. I think it's gonna be very interesting the comparing the two situations because there's a similitude, I think. The codification of vernacular Castilian and the imposition of literary Italian as a national standard language are both linguistic inventions of a new people. From this point of view, we can be more precise what should be understood by saying that language is political matter. Language is a political matter because by inventing a new language, we invent a new people. According to Deleuze and Guattari, what Kafka did in literature in the early 20th century was precisely invention of a new language as the language of a potential new Jewish people. However, when we hear talk of the invention of the language of a new Jewish people in that period, what first comes to your mind is surely the revival of Hebrew as a vernacular. Yes, I think Kafka's literature was doubly political. Kafka did not simply invent the language of a new Jewish people to come, but invented it as an alternative to Hebrew. As is well known, the invention of modern Hebrew was an integral part of the process of building the state of Israel. In this case, what Kafka showed in literature was the potential of the Jews to form a different kind of people than the one which actually came to fruition with the state of Israel. And indeed, between Kafka and Hebrew, we can draw a certain parallelism. Kafka died in 1924, means 2 years after Hebrew was recognized as an official language in Palestine by the British mandate alongside English and Arabic. And the second moment, maybe, Deleuze and Guattari wrote on Kafka in the oil crisis period. The oil crisis was kind of world war into which the Yom Kippur war was external, I think. It's kind of conversion of the Yom Kippur war into a world war. That was the oil crisis of 1973. In that period, Deleuze and Guattari published this book on Kafka. And recently, in 2018, the Knesset, Israeli diet, adopted a new basic law because they have no constitution. No? So just a series of basic law. So in 2018, the Knesset adopted a new basic law which defined Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, the quotation, and recognized first, recognize Hebrew as the sole official language of the state. The following year, it's very curious, and Judith Butler worked on it very, her text is very interesting, but the following year means 2019, Israel nationalized Kafka by housing his manuscript into the National Library after an 11 years legal battle with Germany. No? Oh. Let's get back to Deleuze and Guattari's concept of minor literature. They say that a minor literature is not literature made in a minor language, that is to say, in the language of minority, but literature made by a minority in a major language, that is to say, in the language of a majority. And that's actually what Kafka did. He was a Jew living in Prague, Bohemia, under the Habsburg Empire. And he wrote not in Hebrew, nor in Yiddish, but in German. So we can say that Kafka invented the language of potential new Jewish people within German. Yet, what kind of language exactly did Kafka invent within German? So Deleuze and Guattari define the language invented by Kafka in terms of the deterritorialization. According to Deleuze and Guattari, a minor literature invents a language that ceaselessly deterritorializes itself as well as the major language within which it is invented. So German in this case. In other words, a minor literature invents a language that always escapes any fixation on identity, territory, and it destabilizes the major language from within. But it should be noted, however, that this idea of deterritorialization of language is not Deleuze and Guattari's original idea. They just found it in Kafka's own reflection on the German language Jewish literature during the final period of the Habsburg Empire. In a letter to Max Brod, written in 1921, that is 3 years after the collapse of the Habsburg Empire, Kafka takes stock of the German language literature by the Jewish writers of his generation and claims that in that literature, everyone, including himself, did nothing but, so the term there, motion. What is motion? In common usage at the time, the German word motion was a pejorative term for speaking Yiddish. But Kafka warns that here, motion here means in his discussion on the German language Yiddish, German language Jewish literature, motioning is to be understood in its wide sense, in which the word refers to stealing someone else's property by a relatively fleeting grip, said Kafka. What did Jewish writers steal? They stole the Papierdeutsch, says Kafka. By paper German, Kafka means German as a state and ruling class language, German as a lingua franca, totally detached from the real life of the popular masses. In short, German as a major language. Kafka emphasized that if Jewish writer took hold of German, it was not to appropriate, but to set it adrift. Set it adrift. In this sense, he says that motion can be defined as an organic combination of paper German and gestural language. Gestural language. We can translate this sign language something like this, but we have to translate it in gestural language to have the bodily sense. Jewish writers literally, so it means Jewish writers literally worked with their hands. They physically brought the paper German out of its fixity and set it in movement. What name does Kafka give to the language that Jewish writers invented by means of motion? He names it jargon. Jargon. And only he does so, name it like this, not in the letter to Max Brod, but in a speech on Oriental Jewish poetry. In February 1912, so a little bit 10 years before the letter to Max Brod, so February 1912, a Zionist group organized an evening of Oriental Jewish poetry reading in a public auditorium in Prague and invited Kafka to give an introductory speech. So Oriental Jewish poetry means, it's just kind of basic information. Yiddish language poetry by Jewish writers from Eastern Europe. This is the Oriental Jewish poetry. The German word jargon was at the time a pejorative term for the Yiddish language. What Kafka does in that speech is to take the word jargon as a generic noun and to give it back its neutral meaning. So Kafka defined what is the jargon. According to him, a jargon is a language, so he said, that has no grammar, that escapes all attempts at standardization, that exists only fragmented into multiple dialects, that consist solely of foreign words, that constantly incorporates new words along with the migrations of the population, and that retains the rapidity and liveliness with which it has adopted those words, so that all the words always escape any fixation, be it ontographic, orthographic, semantic, syntactic, or phonetic. For Kafka, Yiddish can be called jargon insofar as it corresponds to this generic definition of jargon as a specific form of language. With regard to Yiddish itself, Kafka recalls that its formation process began as a flight or leap that occurred during the transformation of Middle High German, means medieval German, into New High German, so modern German. So this is kind of leak. And in particular, Kafka questions the fear that Yiddish necessarily arouses in speakers of New High German, means in contemporary German speakers, so fear. According to Kafka, the fear that German speakers feel does not come from the existence of monstrous twin of their language, but from the inevitable destabilization of their own language, German, in contact with that monster, Yiddish. Let's go back to German language Jewish literature under the Habsburg Empire. We now understand that for Kafka, Mauscheln means inventing a new jargon. And Yiddish language Eastern Jewish literature and German language Western Jewish literature were both jargonistic literatures, but in different ways. Eastern Jewish writers worked in a jargon that had already been existing as an oral popular language of Eastern Jewish masses. That is, as a minor language, no? While Western Jewish writers, including Kafka himself, invented a new jargon within the paper language of power, that is, within the major language, you can say that. We now also see where Kafka places the fundamental difference between the two parallel Jewish linguistic inventions of the early 20th century, namely between the revival of Hebrew as a vernacular and the German language Jewish literature. So for Kafka, the difference lies in the form of language. Modern Hebrew is not a jargon. Its form is identity-oriented, not only with regard to itself, but also with regard to any language of power. Modern Hebrew will never provoke fear among major language speakers, such as English speakers, for example, but maybe it will rather provoke fear among minor language speakers, as Arabic speakers, for example. The Zionist invention of modern Hebrew was not aimed at deterritorialization of any kind other than the exclusion of Arabs from Palestine, but at reterritorialization of the Jewish masses on Canaan or Eretz Israel, and by that, on a nation state like the others. No? But the question is, why did Kafka or the Jewish writers Kafka refers to write directly in Yiddish? Why didn't Kafka write in Yiddish? Why did they set out instead to invent a new Yiddish within German? Since the end of the 19th century, Yiddish had been competing with Hebrew for the status of Jewish national language within both Zionist and non-Zionist Jewish movements for national autodetermination. Yiddish was thus captured in the grip of identity politics. From the pure linguistic point of view, Yiddish was deteriorized and deterritorializing language. But from the political point of view, Yiddish was already too attached to the process of establishing a kind of territoriality or identity territory. The work of German language Jewish writers consisted in withdrawal from such politically reterritorialized Yiddish, its deterritorializing essence. In other words, German language Jewish writers detached kind of Yiddishness from Yiddish. Needless to say, the words Yiddish and Jewish are etymologically the same word. From this point of view, linguistic Yiddishness and political Jewishness or Judaity can be seen as two sides of the same coin. By inventing a new Yiddish within the paper German, German language Jewish writers selected Yiddishness out of Yiddish itself. And by selecting Yiddishness out of Yiddish itself, they disengaged Judaity from any Jewish identity politics. For them, means German language Jewish writers, Judaity was not to be an identity, but a deterritorialization of identity in the same way that the Jewish language was not to be neither a minor nor a major language, but a jargon, or as Deleuze and Guattari would say, a minoritarian language, whose transversality blurs all the demarcation lines between the minor and the major. So I'd like to conclude by returning to the letter of 1921 to Max Brod. In that letter, Kafka explained that it was desperation that pushed the Western Jews of his generation to enter into literature and marshalling in literature. So the desperation pushed them to enter literature and to motion. Kafka said that the desperation of those young Jews, he said young Jews, came from a father complex, which nevertheless did not concern the innocent father, says always Kafka, innocent father as conceived in Freudian psychoanalysis, but Kafka says father's Judaity. That is, the Judaity reduced to a mere formal practice of some religious customs, namely the assimilated Jews' Judaism. So according to Kafka, what threw the young Jews to the desperation was the situation in which they wanted to distance themselves from the father's Judaity, but could not find a new soil that is a new Judaity in the given world. Such desperate situation pushed them to invent a new Judaity in literature. The young Jews couldn't find any new Judaity in the given world of that time. Means precisely that for them, all existing Jewish identity politics had nothing to do with Judaity as they thought it, as they saw it. Kafka said that for them, for those young Jews, it was impossible to write in German and to write in any language other than German at the time, at the same time. It was impossible to write in German because German was a very language into which their fathers had been assimilating themselves. But for the young Jews, it was also impossible to write in any language other than German, namely Yiddish and or Hebrew. We've already seen the reason for that, for this. So I don't repeat. So it was this double impossibility that pushed the young Jews to motion, that is, to invent a jargon within German, or if you want, to jargonize German. However, if writing in German means assimilation, motioning doesn't mean writing dentro e contro the assimilation. Assimilation is a deterritorialization of identity, only it's a relative deterritorialization. In this sense, we can state that by means of motioning, the young Jews took over the father's relative deterritorialization and propelled it, pushed it, in spite of itself, into an absolute deterritorialization. I think here is how the young Jews invented a new Judaity in literature, according to Kafka. So thanks, the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I am wondering, because it seems that in the whole point of your argument is all about like literature, like how about like a written language? It seems to be very much focused on that. And I'm thinking there's like all kind of like jargons and so on, very often are like spoken languages. It's something that's kind of like these minor languages, these like smaller with the smaller community languages, even nowadays, I mean, they tend to like keep themselves, they are alive on a level of spoken word. So they don't need to be written. So it's something that you think it has a specific function in that moment. So like, why does these, I mean, in the case of Kafka, also maybe it's a kind of a lonely research. So it's like being, it's very, seems to be very monological in this case. So rather than having a like a community Jewishness, it's about like it's about self-identity. It's something very much part of a monologue, and then maybe that's why it needs to be written down. But what do you think when it comes to like mind, so to jargonize the own language? Can it happen also in just dialogue? Or does it mean to like acquire these written form that is typical of a nation language?
Yes, I think your remark is very interesting, and which touch the core of my thing, I think. Because what does it mean, the invention of the new language in literature? And invention the language of a new people in literature. This is I think this is the point. I think in literature means no, in the given world there's no new people. No, there's new people. In this how do you say? So for me, so your distinction between the written and the oral, I think it's the for me it's the distinction between the literature and the external world. And in the external world, what's actually come to realized is the kind of a kind of Jewish people with the foundation of the state of Israel. But alongside of this process of building the state of Israel, Kafka working to looking another kind of Jewish people. No? My scheme is a little bit like this. So for me, all the 20th century intellectuals or political intellectuals or political philosophers working like this means in the real history of 20th century, there's kind of series of the revolutions, but which was actually not a revolution, but resistance, including the Russian Revolution. I think the Russian Revolution is not revolution, it's resistance against the capitalism. And this kind of series of real resistances, but how do you say it? Next to this series, there's kind of a series of the political philosophies in which consisted always to ask further effort to the people who were struggling in these resistances. I think for example, in the case of Kafka, is already for me is already that means Kafka and Israel. Israel is very important. I think it's a kind of Jewish movement for national autodetermination is very important, I think. And it's Kafka and Israel. So, but a lot of things. For example, so, for example, not no, so we can go get back to the Deleuze and Guattari in the southern plateaus. But for example, in the same period of the southern plateau, Jean Genet and Palestinians, Jean Genet and Palestinians. What he wrote on the Palestinians, kind of, oh no, Jean Genet put himself always next to the Palestinians, asking to them to do a little bit more. It's kind of like that, and I think that the same attitude we can find. The same attitude in the Felix Guattari, and also so this is the main point. So. So yes, written jargon, because which is found in this series, no? This series, because how do you say, para history of the 20th century.
No. From the blind spot.
Go, Charlotte.
I don't know enough about Kafka's relationship to literature in Yiddish, but how closely, how seriously did he restrict Yiddish as a language to Jewish identity, Jewish religious and cultural identity? For example, there was Yiddish spoken by non-Jews. Not only that, there was Yiddish that developed beyond the German-speaking origins. Yiddish that took Romantic and Slavic influences into it. There's Yiddish spoken by small communities in Moldova and Romania and Hungary even today, which are not Jewish necessarily. So if you were to tell Kafka that the literature you're providing is not simply for religious and cultural identity of Jews, but something to do with developing the language as such for a wider audience, what would he say to that? Did he consider it only Jewish?
Yes, I think for Kafka, this is 100% my personal vision. I think for Kafka, Kafka was interested in Jewishness or not Yiddishness than Yiddish. So that's why he never when he talked about Yiddish, he never used the word Yiddish, but he used always jargon. And he said himself that we have to define the jargon in the widest sense. Means don't reduce the jargon to the Yiddish itself. Means he won't withdraw the Yiddish essence from Yiddish. And he put this Yiddishness in his German language literature. And this is very, for him, is a kind of urgent, politically urgent project because Yiddish was already captured by the identity politics, which was not Yiddish Jewish project for him.
Yes, thank you. I understood that the main point is that one of Kafka and Israel, but I also would say that we can extend the idea of becoming minor of the language in a everyday sense. And that is political, or very political too. For example, maybe in these days, we talked in a space in between English, Italian, Japanese. We not all, but some of us Marshall in English. And this, in my opinion, this can be a way to becoming minor, to abandon the sureness of our education, of our formation. And where is the new people here is really temporary, really maybe little, but it is a group of people that renounce at something to do something collective, because one of the point of minor literature, as you know very well, is that it creates a collective assemblages of enunciation. So it is a new people and not the sum of some singularities, but a new, really new assemblage. And I just want to say that because it seems to me that the possibility of these projects, the Leuzian Egalitarian project, is very political, also in a existential sense, and that's there are these possibilities that comes up in every moment, as that one of immanence. Also, this one of becoming minor of the language. So, thank you. Just.
I think yes. I think even here there's kind of formation process of a little people, no? From your speech, there's kind of, and also the not only the linguistic formation, but also the, how do you say, the we are going to share some kind of way of thinking from you, or maybe from you. It's yes, I think so. And in this sense, I'm very interested in the 1492 in Spain. It's crazy, you know, the birth of the nation state. So you know, me personally, I was formed in France. So French people told me that the world first nation state, the modern state, was France, but no, Spain. And this is one thing, but on how the respect to the collective assemblage of enunciation, which is very interesting the things there is that Kafka talked always the young Jews were like this. So he never so young Jews, but when he says young Jews, I don't know who. I don't know who. Max Brod? No, I don't think so. Max Brod, no. Karl Kraus? Yeah, he called the name the Karl Kraus in in this thing, but no, I don't think so. So he called himself young Jews, the plural. Means he won't be valued. He won't be valued not for his individual quality, but for the fact that he participates into a collective movement, even if actually it's only him who participates to this collective movement. So this is yes.
It was also my question to you. Who are the other?
No.
Move forward, unfortunately, to the last speaker. And another interesting topic was the parallelism between Meiji Japan and Italian Risorgimento, but we have no time.
Just one. So it's vertical imposition of a model standard language never functioned neither in Japan, neither in France, nor in France, and no, in Italy. What we had is kind of anarcho-capitalism linguistic. It's kind of free market, linguistic free market, who decided the price, the correct price of I'm sure that in Italy never this imposition of literary Italian as a standard language never have a function of Dante, etc. No, but maybe during maybe in the 50s, 60s, there's a very big migration of the meridional workers into. At that time, we had finally kind of standard Italian, but it's not.
The television.
Yes. Thank you.